and what are all the causes for it, and what are all the clinical features in a patient with these conditions, and how we should investigate a patient appropriately, and what are the treatment options available. So these will be the learning objectives of today's class. Now, to understand the topic very clearly, for those who already know, not an issue. For those who don't know exactly what is varus and valgus, I think this one slide is very important to you. Valgus and varus deformity is a coronal plane deformity. Now, what is coronal plane? In this picture, if you see that the blue shaded plane is the coronal plane. With regards to anatomy, the human body has got three reference planes. One is the plane which connects ear to ear. That is how I was usually taught in my anatomy class. To remember coronal, காதையும் சேர்க்கிற plane தான் coronal. When we didn't understand what exactly it was. So that is how we usually remembered. The plane which connects two ears together is the coronal plane. Or otherwise, if you slice the body exactly as shown in the blue color plane, that is the coronal plane. And exactly perpendicular to this plane is the sagittal plane, right? Now the sagittal plane can be either through the central point or the midpoint. That is called the median plane. Anything away from it is the parasagittal plane, right? Sagittal plane is also known as the longitudinal plane. Now another plane which is perpendicular in a different axis to these two planes is the horizontal plane or the axial cuts, like how we chop the fish when we get it from the stores, right? So you chop it axial. That plane is known as the horizontal, axial, or transverse plane. Hope there is no confusion about the planes now. You all must be knowing it, just to have a refresher, right? So this picture, we consider it to be a normal knee alignment. And now, whenever in a coronal plane, the distal part, for example, if you take the reference point as the center of knee, the distal part is the leg. Are you able to see the cursor when I move it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you take the center point as the knee, the distal part moves with reference to this. So if it goes out, like shown here, if this is the center point and the leg goes out, we call it as valgus, right? If the opposite happens, if the distal part comes in or towards the medial aspect, we call it as varus, right? So in varus, it is bow legs, as you can see here. The knees separate and the malleoli come together. Whereas the opposite happens here. The knees come together and the malleoli go apart. Is this clear? So this is varus deformity. This is valgus deformity. Now there is also deformity in the sagittal plane. If you see here, if the knee is the center point here, if the leg goes back, we call it as a procurvatum deformity. Otherwise, the knee comes forward. The knee joint comes forward. Easily remember, pro means forward, right? So procurvatum, the curve is forward. When you have a forward curve, it is a procurvatum. But when the knee goes back, when you have a backward curve, this is recurvatum. So these are the four possible deformities in a knee. Today we are going to specifically see only about genu varum and genu valgum. Shall we go to the next slide? Does anybody want me to repeat this slide? Hope you've all understood what is varus, valgus, what is procurvatum and recurvatum. Shall we move on to the next slide? Any doubts for anybody? Okay, I assume there are no doubts. So now we will go to what is the etiology. Now to show the etiology, I have a model with me. Okay. What is this bone? Are you able to see?
Tibia.
Yeah. So what is this bone?
Femur.
Femur. Okay. I think identifying the side will be difficult for you from your screen, so I will tell you. So the condyle anterior and the head medially, right? So now what is the side?
Left.
Left side.
Exactly. With regards to tibia, the tibial tuberosity anterior and the medial malleolus on the medial side. Now what is this side?
Right.
You want to say it is right?
Again
This
left.
is the medial side.
Again
and
it's
this
left.
is the
Again it's left.
again it's left. Yeah.
Left,
Very
sir.
good. Very good. So now if you articulate the femur with the knee, and I have two strings attached here. Are you able to see it? So assume these are important structures which support the right. See, now the femur is standing on the tibia. Are you able to see the screen now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes, sir.
Can you tell me what is the important soft tissue on the medial side which supports the femur or the joint, knee joint?
Ligaments, sir.
Yeah, ligament. What is the name of that ligament?
Tibial collateral ligament.
Very good. Tibial collateral ligament or medial collateral ligament on the medial side. And what is on the lateral side?
Lateral collateral ligament.
Lateral collateral ligament, otherwise fibular collateral ligament on the lateral side. See? Okay. Now, this deformity can happen because of the points I have highlighted here. It can be problem with the supporting structure. So whenever the ligament has undergone attrition, what do you mean by attrition? It is a type of degeneration. The ligament slowly thins out, like in rheumatoid arthritis, where it is a soft tissue inflammation. This ligament, to begin with, it will be stout and strong. But as the inflammatory progress happens, slowly the ligament is thinned out and at a particular point it ruptures. That we call it as ligament attrition. Or it can be an acute trauma, like in sports injury, where another person kicks on somebody else's knee. That can cause acute rupture of that ligament. That is ligament injury. So whenever the ligament is torn, you can have a deformity. Now, if I take my hand on the thumb, my thumb is supporting the medial collateral ligament. If this is gone, see what is happening. Now the strand which was supporting the medial side is gone. What is happening?
Valgus deformity.
Exactly. See, so the medial collateral ligament is torn. We are getting a valgus deformity. Now, if I hold this again, and if the lateral ligament is torn, now I'm taking my index finger. Now, what is happening?
Varus deformity.
Exactly. So there can be either attrition of the ligaments or an acute injury. Now, if I hold it together, see the femur is standing on the tibia. Now it's stable, right? So when I leave the medial side, what happened? The knee joint literally opened out medially, right? So this is valgus, this is varus. Everybody understood? Is it
Yes,
clear
sir.
for everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have 84 people online, right? Is it clear for everybody? Any doubts for anybody?
Yes, sir.
I heard some sound, but I think it's a disturbance. Okay, fine. So the primary pathology can be ligament problem, right? Or it can be an articular pathology. Now, this is the medial side and this is the lateral side. If suppose there is joint degeneration on the medial side, like in osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis, if the medial side bone is lost, what will happen? This part of the femur will sink on the medial aspect like this. Now, what is the deformity you are getting?
Varus deformity.
Varus deformity. So this can happen in osteoarthritis, where the medial femoral condyle or the medial tibial condyle is more, it's more on the tibial side. The medial tibial condyle is eroded and the bony support is lost here. So that again can cause varus deformity. Whereas in rheumatoid arthritis, it is the lateral condyle of the femur which is eroded and naturally the joint will sink in this aspect. Now this is valgus
Valgus.
deformity. Right? So this can happen in joint degeneration or like in acute trauma. If there is a fracture of the medial femoral condyle, that condyle fragment will move away, causing the joint to sink here, causing a varus deformity. If there is fracture on the lateral condyle, or either it can be an acute trauma or the condyle could have been fractured and malunited, so that the knee joint is in such a orientation, and then again you will get a valgus deformity, right? So these are articular pathologies. Now what is juxta-articular pathologies? You can have a fracture here in the distal femur metaphysis in this region. right? And the bone can malunite this way. Even then, the deformity externally will appear as if the knee is bent, but actually the deformity is not at the level of knee, but juxta-articular. So any fractures which occur very close to a joint, but not exactly in the joint, that we call them as juxta-articular fractures. If they malunite, they can also cause deformity at the level of knee. And next comes growth abnormality or physeal plate injuries. To understand this, I will show you another picture. Right, this is a picture of the epiphyseal plate or the physeal plate. Right. So this region where the epiphysis meets the diaphysis, we call it as the metaphysis. Hope you all know this already. And this end of the bone is the epiphysis. Now there is a radiolucent area in between these two. This is the growth plate, or we call it as the physis. Epiphysis is sitting on the physis. Metaphysis is next to the physis. That is how they get their name, right? So what is the purpose of this physis? This is where the longitudinal growth of the bone happens. The bone, if you consider the region between these two, my hands is the physis. As the physis expands, slowly the bone grows. Are you able to see my hand? I'm not able to see what I'm showing. Are you able to see my hand?
Yes, sir.
So if you consider this as the epiphysis and this as the metaphysis, actually the metaphysis is static. As new bone formation happens in the physis, slowly the epiphysis moves away, and that is how a bone grows longitudinally, right? Now, what happens with why we should be considered about this? Now, the physis, like the condyles, we have the medial part and the lateral part. Now, if there are some problems which cause arrested growth on one particular side, now if you assume this part of the physis is not growing, and this part of the physis continues to grow, what will happen? It won't grow in a longitudinal fashion. Rather, it will grow in an angular fashion. Are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? One part of the physis is damaged, so this won't grow longitudinally as expected. This will have a tether here, whereas the other part will keep growing, right? So if there is arrest on the medial side and the lateral side continues to grow, you will get a varus deformity. Are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
See if you need to show it in the bone again. Now you assume the joint to be the physeal line, just for the sake of understanding. Are you able to see the knee?
Yes, sir.
Or should I hold it a bit higher?
This is okay, sir.
Okay, right. Now if this part of the physis is damaged and this keeps growing, what happens? The growth happens in an angular way, leading to a varus deformity. Whereas if the opposite happens, if this part of the physis is damaged and this continues to grow, you will naturally get a what deformity?
Valgus deformity.
Valgus deformity. Exactly, right? So this can happen both on the femur or in the tibia, right? Any part of these two physes can be affected, and depending on which particular part physis of which bone is affected, you will have a different deformity. Is it clear now? So if you go to one slide back, so this can happen with physeal plate injuries, or there can be vascular injury to that particular physis. Suppose if you all remember the genicular arteries, we have the medial branches and the lateral branches. Suppose there is some disturbance in the blood supply from the lateral genicular vessels. So the lateral part of the physis will have a stunted growth, whereas the medial part will continue to grow, and you will get a valgus deformity. This can also happen with regards to malnutrition. Which vitamin is responsible, or which vitamin deficiency is responsible?
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
Exactly. So that can also cause angular deformities. Hope all the content in this slide is clear. Shall we proceed to the next slide? This we have already seen. Does anybody want me to repeat the content in this slide? Because this is how you will need to evaluate a patient. Like, to begin with, These problem does not occur only in the pediatric population. It can also occur in adult population. That is my message here. So depending on that particular age, we need to know what could be the cause for the problem, and we need to address the cause. Otherwise, the deformity will recur, or you will have insufficient or inappropriate result for the patient. So we need to understand what cause actually contributed to this problem, right? And then treat it accordingly. Now, this was what the doctor at the beginning of the class was saying. To begin with, any child, any normal child has bowed legs or genu varum, and this can be persistent up to the age of 2 years. Now, after 2 years, slowly the knee starts to migrate and it becomes neutral at about 14 to 2 years, right? 14 months is, 12 months is 1 year, anywhere from 14 months to 24 months. That is the completion of 2 years. Slowly the varus deformity may get corrected to neutral deformity. Now, we said genu varum, valgum, procurvatum, recurvatum. Is there a name for a knee which is perfectly straight? Anybody? Any guesses? Is there a message appearing in the chat box? I'm hearing somebody has given an answer in the chat, I believe. Rectus, yeah, correct. Dr. Mayank Agarwal, congratulations, you've got it right. So we call it as genu rectus. Okay, rectus means straight. So at the age between 14 months to 2 years, the varus usually gets corrected to from varum to genu rectum, and then it progresses to valgus, right? And this valgus can be peak at the age of approximately 3 years, and slowly it grows back to the physiological valgus of what is the normal valgus angle? Anybody? Okay, we will see it shortly. We don't need to waste time, right? So the normal alignment between femur and tibia is valgus. Hope you all agree to it. So the physiological normal valgus is usually achieved at the age of 7 years. Okay. This is a pictorial representation of the same slide. This is a child of approximately 1 year of age. So usually the child starts to walk after 10 months to 1 year. To begin with, if you see, it will be a varus deformity, otherwise a bow leg. Now, this is a serial clinical photograph of the same child starting from the age of 3 years here up to the age of 7 years. So, at the age of 3 years, you will have maximum valgus deformity, and which slowly corrects by itself, comes to normal alignment at the age of 7 years. Are you able to understand this? To begin with, it is genu varus, maximum valgus at the age of 3 years, and physiological valgus at the age of 7 years. This is the message. You should get it clear. Any doubts here? Right. So, what is physiologic valgus? Right? Physiologic valgus depends on the child's age. Like we discussed just now, maximum valgus can be there at the age of 3 to 4 years. It can reach up to 20 degrees. Anything beyond this, we should have doubt. The child is not normal then, right? Now, this should come to the normal angle of 12 to 15 degrees. 15 degrees of valgus angle is the normal, and that should be reached by the age of 7 years. Otherwise, another indirect measurement is the intermalleolar distance, the distance between the two malleoli, starting from here to here. Are you able to see the pointer?
Yes, sir.
Here.
Anybody? Yeah, fine. So the knees are brought together and the malleoli are separated apart. The distance between the two malleoli, the intermalleoli distance, should be less than 8 centimeters. Anything beyond 8 is, you label it as abnormal. So whenever if the parent may bring a child saying that the child's knees are bent, and you just check this intermalleolar distance. If it is about 6 centimeters, you just reassure them. This is normal. This can happen in this age. And we can wait until the age of 7 years. Gradually, this will get corrected. You just need to reassure them, nothing more is needed. But you need to know what is normal and what is abnormal. So physiologic valgus can be up to 20 degrees in a child of age 3 to 4 years. Slowly it should get corrected to 12 to 15 degree by the age of 7 years. Or the other indirect measurement is the intermalleolar distance. Anything less than 8 is okay. More than 8, you should be a bit cautious. Now, what is pathological valgus? Now, irrespective of the age, if the distance what we discussed right now doesn't fall under the physiologic category, it becomes the pathologic category, right? If the child is coming at the age of 6 years, the intermalleolar distance is 10 centimeters, then it is definitely not normal. There is something abnormal in this particular child. So what are all the possible reasons? So these are all the possible reasons. If it is a bilateral genu-valgum, it can be renal osteodystrophy, skeletal dysplasias, Morquio syndrome, spondyloepiphyseal dysplasias, chondroectodermal dysplasias. I don't want to discuss each condition in particular because that will take away much of our time, right? You can go back, refer your textbook, and just have a brief idea about what each individual conditions are. If it is a unilateral genu-valgum, it can be a physeal injury. It can be due to trauma, infection, or vascular insult. It can be a proximal metaphyseal fracture, benign tumors, fibrous dysplasias, osteochondromas, and Ollius disease. So these are all the possible reasons for bilateral genu-valgum and unilateral genu-valgum. Now, what are the clinical features, right? Obviously, if you look at the child, you will know that the knees are brought together and the ankles are separated apart. The distance which we discussed right now, the intermalleolar distance, anything more than 8 we consider as abnormal. And there is a flattened medial arch. Now this has to be explained clearly. This flat medial arch, what is the medical terminology for it? Anybody?
Pes planus, sir.
Very good, excellent. So we call it as pes planus. If you check the child thoroughly, usually, especially in a girl child who used to wear dresses until which covers the knee joint, the parents usually don't note the deformity at the knee joint, but they will say that this child has got flat foot. In the local language, we call it as tattakal, right? The parent will bring the child, tattakal irukku doctor, enna pananum appdinu keppaanga. But the moment you expose the child from hip to ankle, you will see that the problem is actually not at the level of the foot, it is actually at the level of the knee. The child may have valgus knee, which is manifesting as if the child is having a flat feet. Now, this has to be clearly understood and interpreted clearly, right? The patient having a flat foot is an entirely different scenario. There, if you look at the child, lift the foot and see, the moment you take the foot off the ground, you will see a very clear arch. That is not pes planus. But the moment you make the child stand on a floor, it will appear as if the foot is touching the floor, or the medial or the apex of the medial arch will be touching the floor. It will appear so. Actually, the problem is not at the level of foot, it is at the level of knee. That is because since valgus alignment causes the ankle to deviate outward, naturally the distance between the floor and the height or the arch height is reduced. Is it clear? Are you able to understand what I am trying to say? So this is a secondary manifestation of a primary deformity somewhere. Usually this happens, this very commonly happens. The parent will bring the child just for the complaint of flat foot. But if you check clinically, the problem will actually be at the level of knee. So we have to be very careful here. So the patient may complain of a flattened medial arch, or when we check, there could be a flattened medial arch, but be sure that whether that is the primary pathology or it is a secondary manifestation of a primary pathology at the level of knee. There can be growth disturbance. The child may have a stunted growth for her appropriate age. And there can be an abnormal Q angle. We will see what is it shortly. And with regards to X-rays, there is something called a hip knee ankle axis. Nothing but you join a point which is on the center of the femoral head, another point at the center of the ankle joint. If you connect these two, usually it should pass either at the center of the knee joint or about 2 to 3 mm medial to, not deviating further, right? Center of the femoral head, center of the ankle joint, you connect these two, it should pass through the center. Here it is passing lateral to the center of the knee joint. So this is a valgus alignment. Is it clear? Any doubts here? Please, if you have any doubts, stop me and clarify the doubts then and there. Right?
So can you repeat this?
Good. See, this X-ray film is called a long leg X-ray. The X-ray covers from the iliac crest to the patient's foot. Now you have this X-ray with you. You mark at the center point of the femoral head. The femoral head is actually a globe, right? You mark the center of the femoral head and the center of the ankle joint. You connect these 2 points. In case of a normal knee, it should pass through the center of the knee. Are you getting it clear? It should pass through the center of the knee. But here, the center of the knee is deviated medial to this line.
Okay, sir.
Are you able to see that?
Yes, sir.
See, ideally the line should have been here, but the line has gone laterally and the center of the knee joint has come medially. Now this is called a valgus alignment. Okay. If the opposite happens, suppose the center of the knee goes here, then it's called varus alignment. You will see the X-rays shortly, right? Now, have you understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So what is Q angle? Q angle is a clinical measurement. Now what we saw here is a radiological measurement. Q angle is a clinical measurement. How to do it? The anterior superior iliac spine is a very easily palpable bony landmark, usually located here. If you just palpate your abdomen, you go down, the first bony landmark you feel is the iliac crest, right? This point, the iliac crest, right? The bony point which denotes the end of this crest is the anterior superior iliac spine. Another way to palpate it is you press along the inguinal ligament, start from here, start from the pubic symphysis, palpate the inguinal ligament and slowly palpate upwards and outwards. The first bony resistance you feel is the anterior superior iliac spine. Now mark this point. Next you have to mark the center of patella. The patella is a subcutaneous bone. It is very easily palpable. You mark a center point on it and then you mark another point on the tibial tubercle. The tibial tubercle again is a subcutaneous bony landmark. You mark the tibial tubercle. You draw a line connecting these 2 points, another line connecting this point to the ASIS. You extend this line proximally. Now the angle made by these 2 lines is the Q angle. Is it clear? Any doubts for anybody?
Sir, can you repeat once?
Yeah. Any doubts with locating the anterior superior iliac spine? Is that clear?
No, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Any doubts in locating the center point of patella?
No, sir.
Okay. Any doubts in locating the tibial tubercle?
No, sir.
So this is the first step. You have to locate 3 clear bony landmarks. Now, the first line, you connect this point with this point, the center of patella to the tibial tubercle, and extend this line proximally, right? Now, I will tell you the clinical method. Usually, this extension is not necessary. If suppose you are actually doing it on a patient, he has marked a point here, another point here, and usually a thread can be attached from here, and the patient can be asked to hold the thread exactly along the ASIS. Is this clear? This is the white line which you see is actually a thread. The patient is holding the thread at the level of ASIS, and here it has been plastered over the center of the knee. Another line that can be marked on the skin using a skin marking pencil or a permanent marker, whatever you have, from the center of patella to the tibial tubercle. And this instrument we call it as the goniometer, right? Hope you all have seen a goniometer. Has anybody seen it? This is usually used to take clinical angles in a patient, right? It has a center point and it has got 2 limbs. Now, one limb is kept parallel to this white thread. Another limb is kept parallel to the line which you marked on the patient's skin. Now, the angle shown, the angle, you can read it. It is just like your geometry protractor, right? If I'm right, I don't remember the name exactly. So, it shows the angle between this line and this line. Now, this measurement is the Q angle. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine. If you see a goniometer, I think you will be able to understand it better. All these again drawback of online class. If you are physically present here, we can actually have a demonstration of how to measure a Q angle. Unfortunately, we don't have that option now. Hope COVID, after COVID crisis. If you have time, you can come to the ortho department and we can show you this. Right. Now, when you take this measurement, normally, like we saw in the earlier slide, it should be 12 to 15 degrees. That is the normal alignment. Whereas if it is more than 20 degrees, then we call it as genu valgum. See, when it is up to 15 degrees, usually the ankles can touch easily. Whereas when it goes beyond 20 degree, the ankles have to spread apart. Otherwise, the patient will not be able to bring the thighs together, right? Are you able to understand this concept here? So Q angle more than 20 degrees, we name it as genu valgum. Otherwise, the intermalleolar distance, how much it should be?
Less than 8 centimeters.
Less than
Very
8
good.
centimeters.
Very good. Just to check how attentive you are. So the Q angle more than 20 and the intermalleolar distance more than 8 centimeters. Then you call it as genu valgum. Now, we know the causes, we know the clinical features, we know the radiological features, you know the diagnosis now. Now, how to manage this particular patient? The management depends on a few factors, right? So when you have established the diagnosis to be valgus knee, you have to be sure whether it is a physiologic valgus or a pathological valgus. Now, the difference here comes with regards to the patient's time of presentation or age of presentation and the amount of valgus you actually see. Now, if you, all these data we have discussed previously, right? I don't want to repeat it here. Now, if you consider it to be a physiologic valgus, you can either have an observation program. You just reassure the patient, tell the parent that this is a physiological problem and it will get corrected by itself. Now, you can say that you should give a word of caution. You can wait up to the age of 77 years and the angle should be less than 15 degrees, right? Now, anything more than the Q angle, any Q angle more than 15 degree, we just saw we have to name it as genu valgus. So when the Q angle is less than 15 degree and the child is younger than 7 years of age, you just need to observe. If suppose there can be some parents who are very pestering, illa doctor edavadhu pannanum enakku romba kavalaiya irukku, they won't get convinced just by reassurance alone. For those individuals, you can give them a brace. But clinically, there has been only doubtful benefit. We don't know whether the brace will work or it won't work. But just to pacify the parent, you can give a brace. But again, you should give a word of caution. This may work, this may not work, and this is actually not needed. That is how you talk to the patient. Now, if you determine that condition to be an abnormal or pathologic valgus, where the Q angle is more than 20 degrees, the intermalleolar distance is more than 8 centimeters appropriate for that particular age, and you label that to be a pathologic valgus, in that cases, you have two treatment options. Usually, medical management can work in certain cases, especially in rickets, right? If there are rickets, if suppose the deficiency is corrected, there can be spontaneous correction, but we can't be sure of it. So the treatment option which will give you a definitive correction is the surgical management, which is hemiepiphysiodesis or distal femoral varus osteotomy. We'll see where and what it is. You can do hemiepiphysiodesis in a patient who is still young or who has growth potential still left. Are you able to understand it? See, the age should be from 7 to 10. You can't try it in an adult because in an adult already the physis is fused. So you can try it only in child of age 7 to 10 and the valgus angle of more than 15 degrees. Whereas in individuals who have already completed growth or who are nearing completion of the growth, can anybody tell me at what age growth gets completed for a male and a female? Any guesses? Total silence. Is everybody awake? Nobody wants to take this question.
Sir, usually by 15 to 16 in boys and more than 2 years, like 17 to 18 in girls. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other guesses? I appreciate your effort, doctor. See, this is how you should try to answer. See, there are almost 93 candidates who are attending this meeting and only one is volunteering to answer. only if you have the guts to open your mouth here, you will have the courage to open your mouth in front of the examiner in an exam. This is not an exam, this is a class. This is the place where you commit yourself, whether it is right or wrong. If it is right, you get appreciated. If it is wrong, you get corrected and you learn what is correct. That's it. Nothing more than that. See, this is the place where you have to open your mouth, even if you're not sure about it, because you can make mistakes here, but not in the exam. Okay, anybody wants to try again?
Around 18 years in boys and 16 years in girls, sir.
A better answer. Yeah, usually the growth gets arrested earlier in females, right? Now this is a more approximate answer. I congratulate you both, Dr. Surya and Dr. Priyanka, right? If I'm right. Okay, good, doctor, good. This is how you should try to interact with the teacher, right? Because only if it is a physical class, I will be able to see your faces and I know how interactive or how attentive you are. And a big drawback in this online class. Okay, fine. We'll proceed now. So in individuals who are nearing completion of their growth or in individuals who have already completed their growth, in those patients, you cannot try hemiepiphysiodesis. In those cases, you have to do distal femoral varus osteotomy. Now, what are these? So this is the brace I was discussing about. You have a metal bar here, which is rigid, and this elastic strap with a cushion is actually pulling the knee outward. Are you able to understand the mechanism here? We have a metal bar, and this elastic strip is pulling the knee outward. Otherwise, the knees which have come closer together because of the valgus deformity is being pulled apart by the elastic string to correct the valgus deformity. But we don't know for sure whether this will work. Now, to understand what is hemiepiphysiodesis, we need to just revise our previous slide, which we saw at the beginning of the class. Now you have a problem in the physeal plate, and the patient is in the age group of 7 to 10. Like we discussed earlier, you have abnormal growth on one side. You have arrested growth on one side and a normal growth on the other side. Now, can one of you tell me, with regards to valgus knee, which part of the knee continues to grow and which part of the knee there is an arrested growth? Can anybody?
Medial side continues to grow, sir.
Excellent, doctor. Excellent, excellent. Very good, very good. So there is delayed growth on the lateral side, whereas there is normal growth on the medial side. Now what we do in hemiepiphysiodesis, we apply a device like this. This looks like a stapler, right? We put a pin. We don't damage the periosteum here and we don't go and touch the physeal plate here. We just put a pin on the medial side which catches this part and this part. Otherwise, it tethers the metaphysis with the epiphysis. Now what happens? Growth cannot occur here at the normal rate. Whereas whatever growth is left, whatever the height potential the patient has, that will happen on the lateral side. Slowly the deformity will get corrected. Are you able to understand this?
Sir, will there not be height shortening in this procedure?
Yeah,
sir?
yeah, there is a disadvantage. I agree. There is a disadvantage. But the biggest advantage of this procedure is, if suppose there is overcorrection, what you just need to do is remove this pin. If suppose we are correcting it with an osteotomy, right? And if in future the deformity exaggerates on the opposite side, right? What you want to have another option to correct it. Are you able to get my point?
Yes, sir. Yes.
See, if you apply this pin temporarily, maybe for example, if the child is at the age of 7 years and you put this pin and you see the child at the age of 10 and you see that the child's knee is now actually in varus because this has grown excess, but still you have not touched the physis here. And what treatment you need? You just remove this pin. Now this side will also continue to grow and naturally the child will get his natural alignment, neutral alignment with the remaining growth left out. Whereas if you do an osteotomy, you won't have a reversing option. That is the reason why we do it here. But you're right, technically, there is a possibility of reducing the child's overall height. But I think this is a trade-off we do between the genu problem and the overall height. I think the patient will be happy to have a normal knee rather than a few centimeters short. You agree to it?
Yes, sir.
Walking will be very difficult if the genu valgus is very severe. For that, I think the patient can agree to shortening of few centimeters. Usually, that is not. It has been noted that it is not clinically that significant, right? Anyway, we just give a
Okay.
reversible treatment option to the patient. Hope you all understood what hemiepiphysiodesis is, right? Okay, shall we go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
So this hemiepiphysiodesis, this is actually a patient's clinical picture. You can see the amount of valgus here. They have applied pins on the medial side, and you see the amount of correction achieved. And still the physeal plate is open. It is not, the child has got some amount of growth left. If suppose you observe it to be getting overcorrected, or if the knee is going into varus, all you need to do is just remove this pin, right? So what are the advantages here? It is done extra periosteally. You don't damage the physeal plate, but follow-up is very must. You have to clearly convey the message to the patient. This is a condition where regular follow-up is essential. Suppose you put a pin and the patient shifts to some other country and they don't consult a doctor there, ultimately they will end up in genu varus. That should not happen, and that this message should be clearly conveyed to the patient. Now, the biggest advantage is here, removal of the pin permits growth again, right? And this can be done either using a staples, it can also be done using screws and plates, right? Here, actually, they have used a plate, a 2-hole plate with 2 screws here. But we can also use something called as a hemiepiphysiodesis stapler, which is available, right? Now, what is osteotomy? Now, this is the line which I drew, which I showed in the previous slide, the hip, knee, ankle axis, HKA axis. You can see that the center of the knee has gone so much medial to this line. So that much of valgus is there. Now, in postoperative X-ray, you can see that they have done a varus osteotomy here. They have cut the bone, removed it, and plated it. They have fixed it with the plate and screws, and now you can see the alignment. From the center of femoral head to the center of ankle, it is passing exactly through the center of knee. Is it clear now? You can see the amount of mechanical, this we call it as mechanical axis deviation. Deviation of the center of knee from the mechanical axis, which has been corrected here. It has been brought to the neutral alignment. Now it passes through the center of the knee joint. Is it clear? I think the candidate who asked the doubt previously, is it clear to you now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, usually valgus osteotomy, we do the surgery in distal femur, and for a varus osteotomy, we do it in proximal tibia, right? Because the distribution of weight usually is more beneficial if we select these two anatomical regions, right? This can be done with plates and screws. The only risk here is peroneal nerve injury, because if we do an acute correction. Why? Because the nerve actually is on the lateral aspect of the knee, and usually because of the valgus deformity, all soft tissue structures on this side are short, and this side on the medial side are stretched, right? All soft tissue structures on the lateral aspect of knee are shortened, and whereas because of the arc here, the soft tissue on the medial side are stretched. Now, after surgery, we acutely bring it to neutral. Therefore, there can be tension on the lateral side, and this can give rise to peroneal nerve injury. Now, this is one risk which has to be kept in mind when you correct a valgus deformity using a closing wedge, which leads on to varus osteotomy. Is the message clear? Are you able to understand why we get a peroneal nerve injury here?
So, what precautions we should take for that, sir, to prevent?
Either you can do a gradual correction, that is one thing, or when you do peroperative correction, you have to stretch the anatomical structure slowly. Don't do a sudden stretch. Or if you suppose you do it, you keep the knee in flexion postoperatively. Because if the knee is kept in flexion, again, the stretch is reduced on that particular nerve. Right? Either you can do a gradual correction. Gradual correction, you can do something like an Ilizarov, where the osteotomy is done, but it is not fixed internally. It is fixed externally with wires, and you have a hinge mechanism. I don't have a picture right now to explain it to you, where the stretch happens gradually. Here the nerve is stretched gradually and there is no injury to it. In this particular scenario, where you do a plate and you anticipate you are going to cause stretch on the nerve, In such cases, post-operatively, you keep the knee flexed. You just keep the knee flexed so that the soft tissues on this side are not stretched. And this can prevent peroneal nerve injury. Clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So till now we have covered the pediatric genu valgus. Now we are moving on to adult genu valgus. What are all the reasons? Like we discussed earlier, it can be rheumatoid, it can be osteoarthritis, or a post-traumatic deformity. Now, there are only two treatment options here. Either if the patient has already got arthritic changes, if it is an RA or an OA, you straight away go and do total knee replacement. We call it as TKA or total knee arthroplasty. But if the knee joint is not arthritic, like here in post-traumatic deformity, there can be a metaphyseal fracture which has malunited, right? You need not go and do a replacement here. All you need to do is do a corrective osteotomy. So that is required in an adult, right? The corrective osteotomy is very similar to what we saw just now, like in pediatric age group. And this is a picture of a valgus deformity of an adult with rheumatoid arthritis, which has been corrected by total knee replacement. See, now the alignment has been brought to from the abnormal valgus to the naturally occurring valgus. Clear?
So why total knee replacement, sir, instead of
See,
osteotomy?
because the joint surface is already eroded. Look here, there is no cartilage left at all.
Okay, sir.
For this,
Okay.
see, you see the slide here. See, there is so much of sclerosis, there is loss of cartilage. Even if you do a corrective osteotomy, the patient is going to have pain here because the joint is already eroded. In this condition, you do a total knee replacement. Whereas if the joint is not affected and the deformity is extra articular, there you do a corrective osteotomy.
Okay, sir.
Right? Okay. Now we move on to genu varum and especially to pediatric genu varum. So these are all the causes. Genu varum is usually bilateral. It is usually bilateral or more commonly bilateral. Now it can be either a persistent physiological varus. If you can recollect at what age it gets corrected from varus to neutral.
14 months to 2 years.
Exactly. Up to from 1.5 to 2 years of age. Now there can be certain scenarios where this physiological varus still continues, or it can be pathological item, Blount's disease, rickets, osteogenesis imperfecta. MED is nothing but multiple epiphyseal dysplasia. SCD is spondyloepiphyseal dysplasias. You can have metaphyseal dysostosis, fibrous focal fibrocartilaginous defect, thrombocytopenia with absent radius. This is a condition where it is associated with genu varus in the knee, or proximal tibial physeal injury, which can be post-radiation, infection, or trauma. Now, again, I don't want to go into the depth of all these conditions. You have to go back and refer them. And so, this are the clinical pictures of 3 patients with 3 different causes for genu varum. The first is a heel rickets. See, rickets can cause both valgus deformity as well as valgus deformity. Can anybody tell me what is the name given to a condition where in a same patient, one knee is in valgus and one knee is in varus?
Windswept deformity.
Excellent, doctor. Excellent. Can I get your name?
Selvan Ayaki, sir.
Very good, very good. We call it as windswept deformity. So that can happen in rickets. Here it is bilateral genu varum. It has healed now, but still we need to correct the genu varus deformity. Here it is a malunited fracture actually. There is a proximal tibial fracture which is malunited, causing this deformity. And this is an endocrine disorder where the patient has got abnormal angulation at the level of knee. Now this is Blount's disease. What is Blount's disease? This is a congenital dysplasia or bone dysplasia. You can say it congenital or developmental. If it is present at birth, it is congenital. If it usually occurs at growth, it is developmental. And usually it is named as a developmental problem because it is observed only when the child starts to walk at the age of 1 year. And you can see that gradually the varus actually increases. See, after the child starts to walk, usually it should get corrected from varus to valgus, whereas in here, the varus gets exaggerated. The reason is there is an abnormal physeal growth arrest on the medial side. Like we discussed in that particular slide, the physeal arrest can happen either in the femur or in the tibia. Here it is the physeal arrest on the medial aspect of proximal tibia, where there is no growth here, whereas the lateral side continues to grow, giving rise to the deformity. Is the slide clear? Any
Yes, sir.
doubts? So there is arrested growth on the medial side with continued growth on the lateral side, giving rise to the varus deformity. Now there are two types of Blount's disease. One is the infantile type, where the child will present at the age of 2 to 5 years, whereas in adolescent type, where the presentation is usually more than 10 years of age. There are some predisposing factors which have been identified. One is an overweight or obese children, or early walkers. If the child walks even starting from 8 months of time, the physiological load actually causes the physeal growth disturbances. And with regards to ethnicity, Hispanics or the Spanish people and the black people are usually more prone to have this problem. And the pathology here is the mechanical overload in a genetically susceptible individual. And the excessive medial pressure produces inflammation of the physeal plate, which we call it as the osteochondrosis of the physis, can progress to cause a physeal bar. What is physeal bar? Nothing but a fused bone between the epiphysis and the metaphysis. Actually, there should have been a translucent line here, but now all you see is just a fused bony bar. This we call it as an epiphyseal bar or a physeal bar. Okay. So what are the clinical features? Here, for the valgus deformity, you had the intermalleolar distance. Here, you have the intercondylar distance, because in a varus deformity, the ankles are brought together and the knees are separated apart. Like the hip, knee, ankle axis, you have another measurement called as the tibiofemoral angle. Normally, the tibiofemoral angle is about 9 degrees of valgus. That is the normal alignment. Whereas here you can see in this particular child, it is about 37 degrees of varus. Okay. And like in varus deformity, you saw that the secondary manifestation will be a pes planus or a flat foot. Here, usually we can have an internal tibial torsion. Because of the varus deformity, the proximal tibia is rotated so that the tibia itself undergoes intorsion. The proximal tibia goes out, the distal tibia comes in, or call it as intorsion deformity. This can also happen. And whenever the child puts weight on that particular limb, there is a lateral thrust. But I don't have a video here. You can go back and search for the internet. You will have videos of patient walking with the varus deformity. The moment they put weight on that particular knee, the knee will go out. That we call it as a lateral thrust. These are all the clinical features here. Now, again here you can draw the Q angle. If you could recollect, the normal Q angle is 15 degrees, whereas in bow leg it goes less than 10 degrees. Or the ankles are brought together and the knees are separated apart. Okay. Now you know the diagnosis. What is the management? Again, you have to differentiate between the physiological varus and the pathological varus. With regards to physiological varus, like we discussed in the causes, it can be just a continuation of the physiologic varus. Ideally, at about 1.5 to 2 years, the varus deformity should have got corrected to valgus or rectus. But in certain person, it can continue up to 3 years of age. So the maximum time you can wait if to observe a genu varum in case of a child is 3 years of age. Up to that age, you can wait. Brace can help, cannot help, we don't know. It is the exact opposite configuration of the brace we saw there. There, the knees are pulled apart. Here, the knees will be pushed in. Okay. And if you declare it to be a pathologic varus deformity, what should be done? A physeal bar excision, a proximal tibial valgus osteotomy, or a hemiplateau elevation. We will see what are these in individual. Now, this is not exactly representative of the X-ray you saw there. In the X-ray you saw there, the physeal bar was in the proximal medial tibia, right? Now, this is the intact physis where the growth continues to happen, whereas this is the damaged physis where it has been bridged by a bone, which we call it as the physeal bar. Now, surgically, what is needed? You just remove this physeal bar and keep it open. This is actually a fat pad kept in the part which has been removed. So you curate it out. You mark the region of the bony bar. You just keep it, you just keep it open with regard by placing any anatomical material. Here they have used fat to just fill the gap in that area, and the child's limb is splinted so that it is in a normal position and the growth is allowed. Now as the growth continues here, you will have a normal alignment of the knee. You won't have the tethering effect here. Is it clear? Is this procedure clear? Anybody has any doubts here?
Sir, the bone will regrow in that area, sir.
Usually it regrows, but since we have left a defect here, the regrowth will happen very late. We have to splint the child's knee in a neutral position until the growth is completed. You can use POP or you can use a splint externally so that the knee is maintained in a straighter position. If it is in a varus position like this, right? Now, if it is in the varus position, you remove the bony bar here and you just splint it in a neutral position. The growth slowly happens this way, and this area may get filled with bone after completion. Once this, with completion of growth, this physeal bar will also get fused, right? Do you all agree to it? Once the growth is completed, the physeal bar, this physeal plate, sorry, not the physeal bar, the physeal plate will also be fused together. In that situation, slowly this area also gets filled up. Till the time we have to be sure that this bone does not regrow. Usually it doesn't happen that way. Okay? Clear now?
Sir, if
Yeah.
the physeal bar is so big now, if we burr it out now, will it not cause like fracture of the...
That is why we need to protect the knee. You can't allow the child to weight bear without any support. Either you should apply a POP or you should apply a splint externally to support it. Definitely it is possible. If you remove the bone and ask the child to weight bear immediately, there is a possibility of fracture. That is why we need to protect it.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Any other doubts?
So there won't be any more lengthening of the bone on one side, not sir, where we're
Sorry?
excising the physeal. So the area where we're excising the physeal bar from, there won't be any more lengthening of bone. So
usually the problem is the physeal bar there. I'm right. You are considered about the overall lengthening. Now, like I said earlier, the child or the parent has to accept the amount of deformity correction rather than the overall reduction in height, right? There are options of lengthening the bone after completion of growth, like we discussed the Elizarov. Now you say you do the deformity correction and maybe the child lost a height of few centimeters, 4 or 5 centimeters. This can again be corrected surgically after completion of the complete fusion of the physeal plate. You can do an osteotomy there and do a longitudinal growth, create a longitudinal growth by using the Elizarov apparatus. Are you all aware about the Elizarov apparatus?
yes, sir, you taught it last one.
Yeah, we call it as the limb lengthening procedure. It is nothing but we name it as the distraction. Exactly, distraction histogenesis. All anatomical structures, including the bone, muscle, soft tissue, nerve, artery, vein, everything gets stretched. We just need to increase the limb length by doing the distraction histogenesis, right? That is an entirely different topic. If you all worried about the final height of the child is reduced, you can do a distraction osteogenesis or a distraction histogenesis, right? Right now, all we are worried about is how to correct the angular deformity.
Yes, sir. Actually, no, sir. The doubt wasn't regarding the overall lengthening, but how do you find the balance between like the lack of growth on one side and the growth on the other side? That's what corrects the deformity, no, sir.
Yeah, that is how you measure it clinically and radiologically.
Okay. No, sir. I think like what if the other side grows too much, like more than what's needed for the deformity to get corrected?
You are worried about the void which we have left here.
Yes, sir. Like, because there's no growth on one side and then there's normal growth on the other side. That's how the deformity gets corrected, no,
Okay.
sir.
See, there
So
are
what if?
some clear. Now I get your point. Now I get your what you doubt. Initially, I didn't understand. See, you can't do this procedure for all cases. You have to do it only in cases where the central part and the lateral part is still intact. Now, suppose if in the same patient, so much of physis is already fused and only the lateral part of the physis is intact. In such patients, you cannot try this procedure. This is tried only when the outer rim of the physis has got a bony bar. See, you can't leave such a big void in a patient. That is mechanically unstable situation. That is not technically possible as well. This is done only when the outer rim alone is affected. See, for the sake of understanding, this diagram shows as if there is a huge defect. But that is technically not possible because only the outer rim alone is removed and say remaining about 70 to 80% of the physis should be intact. Otherwise, you can't do this procedure. Hope I have cleared your doubt now.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right? See, if only 20% of the physis is left on one particular side, removing a bar of the remaining 80% doesn't help. In that patients, you cannot do this. In such cases, you have to go for osteotomy. This is reserved only in cases where the outer rim alone is affected. You just remove the rim. The void is in such a situation that it usually, is not very clinically significant. You should protect the limb. Otherwise, this can cause fracture. That is also there. But for that sake, you can't remove almost 50 to 60% of the bone on one side. That is not accepted. Hope now your doubt is clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So for the sake of understanding, this is just a pictorial representation. Don't take it the exact what to say. This will be exactly done in the patient. Don't take it that way. Now this is the other surgical method, proximal tibial valgus osteotomy. Now if you recollect, I said that in case of a valgus deformity, the osteotomy is corrected in distal femur. Whereas in case of a varus problem, the osteotomy is done proximal tibia. Now here they have done a valgus osteotomy for a varus situation. Now if you see this mechanical axis here, or the hip, knee, ankle axis, the center of knee has gone lateral to it. Is it clear here? Are you all able to see that? This is the center point of the knee. Either it should lie here or just medial to it. But here it has gone lateral to the line. You all agree to it?
Yes, sir.
Right? So this is a varus deformity, and they have done a valgus correction here. Actually, this is what to say. This is an overcorrection. In this particular individual, there has been some overcorrection. That is why there is so much of deformity here. For the sake of understanding alone, I have put this picture. Now again, don't get confused because of the line goes so much of medially. This particular patient, there has been an overcorrection, right? Usually it should come center, like what we saw in the X-ray for the valgus deformity previously, right? So to begin with, there is a varus deformity and they have done a valgus osteotomy and there is some amount of overcorrection here. What they have done, they have just osteotomized here and elevated it and placed a bony bridge in between, right? Now this is done in case of an adult patient. There is another procedure known as the hemi-plateau elevation. What is here again? You just cut just below the medial condyle, elevate it, and put a bone graft in between, like shown here. You can see that this is the medial part. Go just beneath the medial condyle, elevate it. See the amount of gap created here, and you fill this gap with bone. Now, what is the difference between this procedure and this procedure? Here, the osteotomy is through and through, starting from the medial cortex, extending almost to the lateral cortex, whereas here, it is starting from the lateral medial cortex and exiting only at the center of knee, not here. That is the difference. Here it is the entire plateau is elevated. Here, only the medial plateau is elevated. Am I clear? Are you able to understand this, or is it confusing?
Sir,
Yeah.
Sir, this is correction of valgus, no, sir. If we do it in the medial side.
Now, okay. Just a minute. I'll come back to the presentation. Now, what is the problem here? Valgus or varus? Tell me. The medial plateau is depressed. What is the problem here?
Varus deformity. Oh, you're like inserting a white color is inserting a new bone.
Yeah, we are inserting a bone graft there.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay. I thought we are
For a
removing
varus-
a piece of bone.
So, okay, fine. See, they have elevated it and placed a bone graft inside. Right? The white color thing is a bone graft material. Okay? The point
Okay,
I
sir.
wanted to stress here is this is a hemi-plateau elevation where only the medial condyle is elevated, whereas here the entire condyle, see the osteotomy line is from here to here, started here and it exited here. The entire plateau is elevated in valgus osteotomy, whereas in hemi-plateau, the lateral part is not disturbed. Only the medial part is elevated. You can do both, either of the procedure, whichever the surgeon is familiar or is confident of, they can do any procedure. Both gives good result, right? And then final thing is, again, total knee replacement. Here you can see that there is so much of collapse on the medial side. And as a result of this collapse, the patient has actually got a stress fracture in the proximal tibia shaft. So this has been addressed with total knee replacement, where the joint is replaced as well as they have used an intramedullary device to fix the fracture as well. This is the lateral view of the same. They have replaced the joint with a medullary rod to address this stress fracture here. So clear about the treatment options: physeal bar excision, proximal tibial valgus osteotomy, hemi-plateau elevation, total knee replacement. Physeal bar excision in case of a pediatric age group where the physis is still intact, and these can be done in adults. And these two in individuals who don't have arthritis, actually the joint is actually not damaged, therefore they have addressed the extraarticular deformity, and here the joint is already destroyed. There is no residual cartilage left, and here you straight away go and do a knee replacement. Is it clear? Does anybody want me to repeat the treatment options?
Sir, osteotomy means we are removing a piece of bone. Is that the meaning?
Okay, fine. See, any cut in the bone is called osteotomy. Any cut, right? Now,
Okay, sir.
what you are going to do after the osteotomy, that determines the valgus, varus, opening wedge or medial wedge. Actually, that will take a lot of time to explain it to you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. See, you cut the bone. Are you able to see the bone here?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Forget it about which anatomical region I'm explaining. I'm just explaining what is osteotomy. You cut the bone. Now you just have a horizontal cut here. Now, if you do a varus displacement or a valgus displacement, that can be achieved by two methods. You do a horizontal cut here, another oblique cut here. You will remove a triangle piece of bone. See,
Yes, sir.
understand that here, if you remove the triangle piece of bone, this part of the plateau will come down. Do you all agree?
Yes, sir.
So in that case, we call it as a closing wedge osteotomy. Now, if you do the reverse, you actually create a triangle and place some bone in that area. We call it as an opening wedge osteotomy. Now, if you consider it to be done in the distal femur, if you take a horizontal cut here and you open it on the lateral side, you will be actually causing varus, right? And you do an opening wedge osteotomy. Now you make a horizontal cut here, do another oblique cut here, and you remove a triangle piece of bone. And after removal, you correct it. Now you will be causing valgus. That we call it as a closing wedge valgus osteotomy. Is it confusing to you? It is actually a bit difficult to understand it all by concepts. We can actually show the cuts in a bone model. If you all are interested, you can come to the skills lab which we have in our orthopedic department. You can do the cuts and try to understand what osteotomy is. Are you getting the point, or is
Okay.
it confusing?
Little bit confusing.
Yeah, I know, because I don't have any material here which I can cut and show you. I'll try it with the paper. Okay, this is a cylindrical bone. Are you all able to see it?
Yes, sir.
I will just come to my screen. Okay, now I am able to see what I am showing, right? Now assume this to be a bone, a straight bone. Forget all the deformities. Now I am going to explain what an angulation osteotomy is. Now this is a straight bone, and if you cut it horizontally, now still the bone is straight. Do you all agree?
Yes, sir.
I have just did an osteotomy here. Now, what am I going to do after the osteotomy? Now, if I am going to tilt the distal fragment medially, now what I am doing? What is being caused?
Varum.
Right. Yeah, now I am causing a varus osteotomy. Now, varus osteotomy can be done in two methods. One, now you all see that there is a horizontal cut here. Now what I can do another cut this way and remove this triangle piece of bone and close this gap. Now I have created a varus. This we call it as a closing wedge osteotomy, where I have cut a bone, removed the fragment of the bone and closed the gap. This is a varus closing wedge osteotomy. Now, this can also be done in another way. Without removing a triangle piece of bone, I can open it this way, where there is a gap now here. There is a contrast material. Wait, just a minute. Now, I'll use my mask. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, instead of removing a bone, I just create a gap like this, a triangle on the lateral side. Is it clear? Are you able to see it?
Yes, sir.
And I fill this gap with bone. You call it as an opening wedge osteotomy. When I remove bone and close the gap, we call it as a closing wedge osteotomy. When you open the gap and fill that gap with bone, we call it as an opening wedge osteotomy. Now, both can be used to cause a varus angulation. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Is it clear? Okay. So, the same osteotomy can be done to do either a varus or a valgus. Now, if I open it on the medial side, it is the medial opening valgus osteotomy. If I remove a bone from the lateral side, right, like this, if I remove a triangle of bone on this aspect and I close the gap, it becomes valgus closing osteotomy. It is just a principle. You can apply the principle in any way to achieve what result you want. You can do an opening wedge, you can do a closing wedge. Usually what they prefer is, since you are not leaving a gap, a closing wedge is usually preferred in certain cases, but that depends on that particular patient, how much of angle you are supposed to correct, what is the weight of the patient, whether the patient is very healthy, healthy enough so that his bone formation will be good. There are multiple factors to it. So it is the surgeon who decides which type of osteotomy he wants to do. But ultimately, to correct a varus, he does a valgus. To correct a valgus, he does a varus. That's it. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
It may not be 100% clear, I agree, because it is a topic which is way beyond comprehending in an online class, right? I think somebody has already left the class. Dr. Maithili Duraisamy, I think I bored her too much. Fine. So we'll go back. I think that completes the topic actually. So any further doubts? I'm ready to answer.
Sir, closing
Yeah.
with Jila, you get shortening, and in opening with osteotomy, there's not much shortening.
Excellent,
that
doctor.
correct?
Excellent. 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 Now you have understood it correct. Very good. Any other doubts?
Sir, is there any difference in treatment if the condition is unilateral?
Okay, your question is too ambiguous. Can you be more specific? You say it is a unilateral valgus varus pediatric adult, because we have multiple factors to consider before we offer a treatment option to that particular patient, right? Unilateral and bilateral problem can be there either in a child or in an adult. It can be a varus or valgus, right? Wherever the deformity is, you have to correct it. If it is unilateral, you correct only that side. Whether if it is bilateral, then you have to correct both. Only then the patient will have a normal gait. Now, if you correct one limb and leave the other limb abnormal, again the patient will have gait disturbance. Or do you want to reframe your question?
Sir, like unilateral cases, there can be height difference, no sir, between the two limbs.
You can correct the height difference by doing an Elizarov later.
Oh, okay, sir.
You can correct everything, doctor. You can correct everything. All you need is patience from your side and patience from the patient side. Because both deformity correction and limb lengthening, they are not something like a fracture care. A fracture care, the patient comes with a broken arm, you plate it, the next day the patient has got a almost normal bone. But deformity correction is not that way. You have to wait until the growth, until the osteotomy unites, right? And in cases of Elizarov, the distraction process can be 1 mm per day and almost double the time for it to unite completely. So Elizarov, you may need the patient to wait for even almost a year or two with Elizarov in his leg. So it is not a very simple procedure. That the principle is understood very easily, but to do it and get the results, actually you need to wait for a longer time. If the patient is ready for that, then we can do it. Anything, any angular deformity, any shortening, lengthening, whatever you want to do, you can do.
How can Elizarov be done cosmetically? Or
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
can the Elizarov technique be done for cosmetic purposes without any deformity?
Yeah, you can do it. You mean to say the patient to begin with is actually short and he wants some height to be achieved. That is your question,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir,
it can be
just
done.
for cosmetic
It can be done.
purposes.
It can
Is
be done.
it done generally?
If the patient wants, it is done. Yeah, we can do it.
Okay. Thank
There have been, you can just search Google for such publications. There have been publications which show limb lengthening procedures where the patient wants to get more height in order to qualify for sports or to qualify for army or even for marriage. Men or women who are very short and don't get a marriage proposal, they come, approach the surgeon, get the limb lengthened by a few centimeters, and they appear taller than previously, and then they get easier marriage proposals. Things are happening. Yeah, you can do.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But having said that, Elizarov is a lengthy procedure. The patient has to agree to it because you will have a ring surrounding the limb. Though you can get a height, the patient acceptance is not that popular because they don't want to say, they find it difficult to walk with a ring in their leg. So patient acceptance is actually lower for Elizarov. Now I think in the future you have intramedullary devices which can cause lengthening as well. Those are all recent developments, not yet fully clinically applied. But in future you may have other devices like Elizarov which are more cosmetically appealing, and the patient acceptance may go high. It can happen.
So if you replace the femur with a rod, it's done in a lot of accidents and all that. So if you actually insert a rod with a longer length, wouldn't the height just increase? And
Sorry, I don't get your question.
it's kind of a stupid doubt, sir. Like a lot of road traffic accidents and all, you replace a femur with a rod. And so
Okay,
if you
okay. You
just,
mean to say in fracture scenario, instead of the standard length, you keep a rod which is more length.
yeah,
That is what you're
just-
trying to say.
Yeah, then that
What will
technically
happen?
will increase in
Okay.
height.
See, the femur is broken here, and you place a rod in the intramedullary canal. And if you keep a rod which is lengthier than the femur, what will happen at the fracture site? You will actually be distracting the fracture.
Yes, sir.
You will have a
And-
gap non-union. You will have a gap non-union. See, in Ilizarov, you have to understand the concept right. In Ilizarov, you don't do the osteotomy and you don't lengthen it immediately. You gradually lengthen it 1 mm per day, so that if you want, a height of about 4 centimeters, 4 centimeters amount to 400, how many? 40 mm, right? So for 40 days, you have to slowly distract the osteotomy site, and you have to wait twice that period. 40 days into 2, 80 days. So totally 120 days the patient has to wait for this gap to slowly widen and you get filled up with the bone. Now we are able to understand what we do in limb lengthening.
Yes, sir.
Now, instead of doing this, you just do an osteotomy, distract the bone and place a rod. You will leave nothing but a gap there. It is gap non-union, which is not technically correct. Hope I have answered your doubt.
Yes, sir.
No, this is how you can ask. You don't say this is a stupid question, because this is not stupidity. This shows that you are thinking in the correct angle. You are thinking in the correct aspect. You think it, you ask it, and you get your doubt clarified. I really appreciate you. Don't say that this is a stupid question. Definitely not. This is something which makes you understand the concept better.